I like the beaver colors.
Exactly. Those yellow stickers.
Call to order the regular city council meeting for September 17th, 2013. Everybody please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mayor Middleton.
Here.
Council President Henderson.
Here.
Councilor Grant.
Here.
Councilor Folsom.
Here.
Councilor Butterfield.
Here.
Councilor Langer.
Here.
Councilor Clark. Here. Thank you.
Consent agenda approval of September 3rd, 2013 council meeting minutes.
I'll move consent.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have two presentations tonight. First one is Matthew Brooks. Are you here? Come on forward. Please go ahead and sit down over there because we'd like you to explain how you got your Eagle Scout, your project. If everybody knows, he's just one of our newest Eagle Scouts in town. Push the button up. The button should be up. There you go.
All right. Well, the principal, Carlos Cicada, I sent him an email and he emailed me back saying he wanted some longboard racks installed at the front of the high school because a lot of kids ride their longboards. They're kind of like skateboards. They ride those to school every day, and they were storing them in the front office. And it was getting to be a big hassle for the people working at the front desk to have to watch over those all day. So he had me build these 3 longboard racks at the front of the high school, and I raised about $1,800 to build those. And we built 3 racks at the front of the high school.
That's super. They're out of wood, right? Or
No, they're
metal?
They're metal, yeah.
Oh, great. That's the newest thing. No bikes now. They use the
Yeah.
longboards.
Yeah.
Great. So when did you get your Eagle Scout?
I did my board of review probably about a month ago. Finished that all up, and I got the paperwork back 2 weeks ago.
Well, we want to thank you. The whole community wants to thank you for doing these projects, and you've done a great job. And we'd like to give you a certificate of achievement for this, and please come back anytime to listen to council. We love having you guys here, and once again, thanks for the project.
Thank you.
The second tonight is a proclamation, and this is a really important one too, since we are one of the homes of the wildlife. What it is the 20th anniversary. It didn't seem like it's been that long. The Friends of the Refuge for September 28th and 29th. They're having an event on that evening. Whereas the day, I believe it is. Whereas the Tualatin River National Wildlife Refuge is a large part of what makes Sherwood unique and one of the reasons Sherwood is amongst the most desirable communities to live in, and whereas the city of Sherwood first proposed the refuge to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife in the early 1990s, and city-elected appointed officials, city staff, and Sherwood citizens were tireless in their support of this urban natural area. Whereas the Friends of the Refuge was established in 1993 to expand support for the refuge, and the founding board of directors and the Friends included, among others, the city mayor, 4 prior mayors, the city manager, and the deputy clerk. Now therefore it be resolved that I, Bill Middleton, mayor of the city of Sherwood, do hereby proclaim September 28th and 29th, 2013 as Friends of the Wildlife Refuge Weekend in the city of Sherwood, and call all our citizens surrounding communities to visit the Wildlife Refuge. Now I go down there about once a week and walk it, so it's fantastic. So, yes, Cheryl, I'm not Turcozy Hart, please come forward and get the proclamation. Thank you.
First of all, I'd also like to mention that Michelle Miller, who is on the city staff, is one of our board members, and Linda Henderson, one of the councilwomen, is a previous board member, and so we have other representatives here from the Friends Group. My name is Cheryl Hart. I'm the president of the Friends of the Refuge, and I want to invite everyone in the community to participate in our 20th anniversary celebration on Saturday, September 28th. The community part of it will start about 11 o'clock in the morning, and we are going to be constructing, I was going to say a life-size, a huge eagle's nest structure on the side of the trail. And that's going to be a huge undertaking. We have an artist who knows how to do that, but it's made out of sticks and branches, just like a regular eagle's nest would be. So we're welcoming everyone, kids of all ages, grandparents, whoever wants to come to participate in that. Please do come and be a part of it, because it's a symbol of what our refuge is. It's been built by the community, and we want to symbolize that as a part of our celebration. We'll also be having our annual meeting that day, and we have people who were founders of the refuge or early board members who are coming from as far away as Virginia to attend the meeting that day. So it's going to be a very special event for us and hopefully for the community, and we'd like to invite you all to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have a public hearing. Ordinance 2013-007, an ordinance approving the Sherwood Town Center Plan and vision, policy, and strategies to guide future implementation.
Mayor, I'll read a public opening statement before staff gives the staff report. The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear a testimony on ordinance 2013-007, an ordinance approving the Sherwood Town Center Plan and amending the comprehensive plan text to reflect the Town Center Plan and establish a vision, policy, and strategies to guide future implementation. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said item. The order of business the council will follow is to hear the staff report, receive any correspondence, receive public testimony, receive additional staff comments. Questions from the council will follow. The hearing will then be closed and no further testimony will be received. Discussion by the council will follow. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and limit your testimony to 4 minutes.
You ready for me?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, in your packet, you've got the Planning Commission recommendation as well as some written testimony from ODOT. We also received, and I believe Sylvia has distributed it to the council, a letter from BPA. We send agency comments out. They responded basically saying that they don't have any objections as long as it doesn't affect their facilities, it won't. And then we also received a letter from Washington County generally concurring with the ODOT comments. So I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that and made it clear that those letters were being entered into the record. Let's see if I can do this. Yay. So tonight's meeting, I'm just going to briefly discuss why we're doing a town center plan, talk about the plan highlights, discuss how it's evolved over time, and I think it's evolved quite a bit, and it's kind of exciting the amount of public input that was received and how that helped the plan evolve. We'll talk about the comprehensive plan changes, the highlights of that, and then talk about how there will be future steps in implementing the plan, and then finally the public hearing. And the council has seen this slide before, I know, at least in the work session. I know the mayor has seen it a number of times because he sat through many planning commission meetings where we've discussed this. But I just wanted to reiterate why we're doing a town center plan. In the 1990s, Metro Council adopted the 2040 growth concept that guides the growth and development for the next 50 years. And Sherwood had a town center designated in the vicinity of the Six Corners area. There was no plan ever adopted, and so it was a plan, and I'll show you here in a second what those boundaries were. Having a plan helps communicate the community's vision and helps focus on investments and strategies. It tells existing and future residents and businesses what we want to see and what we don't want to see. And then why we're doing it now is that we received a grant from the state to do that, and the main components of that were to evaluate the town center boundary, identify opportunities and constraints for successful redevelopment, and creating a strategy for development and redevelopment of the area. So the study area that we looked at is much larger than the actual six corners, the town center boundary that was initially identified by the city, again, with no real formal public input or plan adoption. But if you look at your screen, the gray dashed area up in the Six Corners area is what Metro has considered till now as our designated town center, because that's what we told them it was. But when we began the study, we looked at a much larger area to have a lot of areas to look at from an opportunities and constraints and evaluation process. So then we, as part of our development, we had a review structure that really included a lot of community participation. We had updates in the Archer, the website. We had an interested parties list. We had articles in the Gazette. We had stakeholder interviews, open houses, surveys. And then that input, along with a stakeholder advisory committee that consisted of business owners and property owners in the area, HOAs within the study boundary, as well as representatives from the school district, some transit representative, people who used transit and could speak to that. School district, I think I said, student representatives were part of this stakeholder advisory committee. And then we had a technical advisory committee comprised of agency staff, Metro, TriMet, ODOT, Washington County, as well as neighboring jurisdictions of Tualatin and Tigard. And that they fed recommendations into the steering committee, which was the planning commission, was the designated steering committee, and that all evolved into the town center plan. And I'll briefly highlight the plan elements. The plan boundary, as you can see from this map, the brownish line is the study area that was initially studied, and then what you have with the subdistricts is the actual boundary that evolved. And it includes 3 districts or subdistricts, and that's going to be important as this evolved in recognizing that there's those 3 districts. The Langer Drive district is envisioned to be more pedestrian friendly over time, reorienting the buildings to the street rather than parking lots, again, as development and redevelopment occur. Looking at parking needs, whether or not we can reduce parking to allow some more infill in those areas, encouraging a mixture of uses, but retaining the visibility on these busy roads. The central neighborhood is really included because it ties both the Langer Drive Commercial District and the Old Town area together. There's opportunities to have enhanced pedestrian improvements, filling in sidewalk gaps, and there's an acknowledgement that you would really be trying to preserve those existing neighborhoods, but there would be infill as allowed now, but infill that may happen over time, and we want to make sure that as we move forward in implementation, that we make sure it continues to be compatible with the existing neighborhoods. And then the Old Town overlay area pretty much remains as we currently envision it, with preserving the Main Street character, having the buildings designed to draw people to Old Town, and focusing on the local small-scale buildings. Another element of the plan is streetscapes, trails, transit, and parking. So the plan envisions enhanced streetscapes on Langer and Sherwood Boulevard with wider sidewalks, landscaping, bike facilities, making some streets more bike-friendly as we have opportunities, having more connections throughout the plan area, having gateways, and I actually have a map here on the next slide that shows kind of the gateway concepts to really show this is where you're at, and making sure that the entire town center has elements that are similar but has unique pieces for each subdistrict too. And the devil's in the details. This will be developed over time. We don't, not everything is known at this stage, and that's okay. One thing I want to stress is that this plan, it provides a vision. And as I talk about these and the streetscapes and the trails, we're not doing anything through this plan specifically. We're not saying you shall move the buildings, this is how we're going to design these streets. It's laying out a vision so that as we do the capital improvement planning or as grant funds are available, you kind of have an idea of what you're trying to work towards, but there'll be future opportunities for public input and process as we move forward. And this is the diagram that I just mentioned about having some gateway elements and unifying corridor elements to really show now you're in the town center from different gateways throughout the town center entry points, and then having common themes throughout corridors so that you kind of are drawing people from one of the commercial areas to the other and making it seem cohesive. So that's a very highlighted version of what the plan says, and it's in your packets, and hopefully you've all read it. I want to touch a little bit on how the plan has evolved. So the Council and Planning Commission had a joint work session in June of this year, and at the time there was still a lot of uncertainty that was discussed from the Planning Commission about the boundary. There was concerns about the strategies and the action plan items. And there was also a significant interest in, or significant increase in citizen interest. As you recall, Walmart was announced about that time, and they had named themselves the Sherwood Town Center. And so we suddenly had a lot of people that were paying attention to the town center and had concerns about that project, but also had some concerns about this project. And it really turned out, I believe, to be a blessing because it allowed us to really get a lot more public input and feedback. And I think you would recall at the time of the Joint Planning Commission Council work session, I know that some of the councilors were kind of questioning, are we ready? Are we ready to move forward? And I think what we realized and the Planning Commission realized was, no, not quite yet. And so the commission slowed down and we took the time to get more input. We had several additional Planning Commission work sessions where we discussed the policies and strategies in depth. And then we also had a wonderful public work session where we invited the public to come into small group discussions facilitated by the planning commissioners. So there were like 2 planning commissioners at each table to really get in depth at these policies, these strategies, what are your concerns, what do you like, what do you not like? And that all helped really inform where we are today. And this slide, I'm highlighting the revisions from what we initially had, not because that's what you've necessarily seen, but I want you to really see that what the Planning Commission put before you as a recommendation is the product of a lot of input and refinement and listening. And so I wanted to highlight that. Some of the things that were revised from the original plan that was developed by the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and Technical Advisory Committee and the Steering Committee was removing the action plan from the adoption package. Initially, we had envisioned that we were going to have the town center plan and then this adoption package that would help guide future action. And while we at the staff level understood that that wasn't final and that there would be future public conversations, it really caused a lot of confusion and concern when we were talking about it. And so we just said, well, let's not include that. Let's not send that message to the public that that's necessarily where we want to go. Let's focus on the policies and strategies, and then we will have conversations about all of these, which is what was intended with the action plan anyway. So the action plan was taken out of the adoption package, and then throughout the town center policies and strategies, we really softened the words to make it more clear that there's going to be future implementation actions, and those are going to be collaborative processes with a lot of public outreach at decision-making points. We also removed any reference to higher density. Again, we knew that that was going to be a future conversation and that we may not ultimately go there, and so we wanted to really focus on the intent, which was appropriate scale of mixed uses. And so again, to try to just eliminate that concern that we knew there was going to be additional conversation about. We also eliminated the strategy that called for allowing 4-story buildings in the old town portion, especially of town center. There was very little support, and when we took the time to get additional input through the surveys, it was pretty overwhelmingly negative towards that, and it wasn't something that we needed to do, and so we eliminated that strategy. Modified the parking strategies a little bit to again reflect that we're going to have conversations and not make it seem like there's a foregone conclusion that we're going to reduce parking or have greater flexibility, but that we're going to look at it. We also added a new section of the comprehensive plan to acknowledge that future planning was needed for the Six Corners area. And this really got to the boundary concerns about, are we looking too narrowly? What about what happens on the other side of 99W and the other side of Tualatin Sherwood Road? And so what this did was just allow a placeholder and an acknowledgement that we know that there's more beyond just this town center area that we need to be considering. And then finally, we added reference to consider adjacent areas when implementation efforts began. And we did that through the Planning Commission hearing process. Primarily, we received some public input with concerns about impacts on adjacent properties, especially across Tualatin Sherwood Road. The Planning Commission made changes. Based on that, they did not take all of that property owners' recommended changes, but they took a lot of that. And I want to point out here that this is the ODOT comments and the Washington County comments are really speaking to that issue, the adjacent concerns. And I'll pause here for a second. We can go through in detail the ODOT comments if you want to, either before we get to the public hearing or after the public hearing. I believe it's kind of a semantics thing. What the Planning Commission is intending to say, I believe, is that we acknowledge that there's more to anything that we do than just the town center itself, and we want to think about how it impacts adjacent areas. Agency staff hears adjacent areas and thinks that might mean, well, how far does that go? How far are you looking? And feels as though it might undermine the town center plan itself. I think you could really go either way. I think as long as we have a good conversation about what that means to us and we have a legislative intent and a legislative history, I think you're okay. So we can kind of talk about whether or not changes to those policies and strategies based on the additional information that was received, if that's something you want to do, but I don't know that you have to. Sorry. This is just highlighting again where we're at in the process in the adoption hearings. We're about 3 months later than we had originally anticipated on being because of the slowdown, and that's okay. And I think it's, again, a better end product than it would have been if we started the adoption hearings in June. Just quick highlighting the comp plan amendments, mainly for the record, because I know that you guys have this in your packets, but we updated Chapter 4 to reflect the town center plan. There's a new Chapter 9 that's referred to as a special area plan section that provides some general policies for all special area plans. So this lays the foundation for if we wanted to do special area plans in other areas of the community at a later date. In the future, we have sort of a foundation to start from. We've done a very brief intro to the Six Corners Commercial District and identified what we mean by that with a map to say, okay, this is the Six Corners Commercial District, we need to plan for it. And what that allows us to do is when we're implementing the town center plan and the policies that talk about adjacency and things like that, we have something to work with. And then finally, the town center plan itself is incorporated into the Chapter 9 of the comprehensive plan, providing the overview of the plan, boundary, land use and transportation components, and then policies and strategies. And I want to clarify here in your packet, in Exhibit A.2, which is the proposed comprehensive plan changes, the very last page talks about, it says insert final policies and strategies here. Rather than reproducing what's in the plan and having that reproduced in the actual comprehensive plan changes, in the event that you made additional changes, we didn't do that, but I just want to make it clear for the record that whatever you adopt for policies and strategies in the town center plan would become those policies and strategies in the comprehensive plan document. So I just want to make that clear. Two more slides, Mayor. I promise. Future action, again, I want to just stress, and it's stressed, I think, throughout the policies and strategies and the plan itself, but the adoption of this plan lays the foundation for future actions that will be needed. It doesn't actually make anything happen right now. It sets a vision, it sets a tone, it tells us what we want to work on as we go forward in other planning activities. So we know that we're going to need to do additional steps, evaluating the development code for accessory dwelling units, modifications in the Old Town process, parking requirements, setbacks, and there's probably a few more in there. We're also beginning our transportation system plan update, and some of these strategies will be folded into that conversation to continue that conversation. There certainly could be a branding or signage program that we decided that we want to undertake, but again, not added to any work program right now, and that's something that we would discuss as we move forward with budgets and workloads and things like that. It's also possible that there could be zone changes or density changes in the future, either by an applicant or if the city wants to move forward with additional discussions about that. But again, all of those actions will have additional public outreach, engagement, and I want to stress again how well responded to the public work session that we had with the Planning Commission was, and I envision that we will replicate those types of work sessions again in the future, because I think the Planning Commission really liked it and the public really liked it. And so as we move forward with implementing elements of this town center plan, I imagine that we'll have more of that dialogue type of opportunity with the public. So my recommendation to you this evening is to hold a public hearing and consider adopting the Planning Commission's recommendation that includes the town center plan, which includes the boundary, vision, policies, and strategies, and then the comprehensive plan amendments to reflect the town center. Oop, no, don't go there. To reflect the town center plan, including new Chapter 9, the special areas plan, and then, as you weren't supposed to see, but you did, I have the policies and strategy slides up if you wanted to get into those details. The Planning Commission went into a lot of detail in those. So I have those if we wanted to start getting into the details of those, but I wasn't going to necessarily make that part of my presentation.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up now to public comments.
Mayor, you have some sheets in front of you, I believe.
I don't believe we might have one. These are on, one of them is on, they're all on different issues. Jim, Jim, you want to come forward and give your public comments on it? Okay.
Robert James Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. And I've got to tell you, this is the most remarkable transformation I've ever seen. When we moved here, there was a CBD in this town. That probably doesn't mean much. It was Central Business District. Cannery, banks, restaurants, and until the Langers with Dave Zimmel took the post office, it was a meeting place. And it had a set of road nets that everyone centered on it. It was low density, it was diversity architecture, and it was incredibly pedestrian oriented and biking. That's how people had gotten to it from the cannery. In the time we have developed, how is it you put it, Ms. Henderson, our so competent planning group, we have stopped any form of restoration, and you have to rebuild by the fee structure. You cannot, and there is no break here for restoration. So the restoration that was started on the hotel, the theater, and a number of buildings has all been abandoned because you've structurally made it so your staff needs fees, So you require tearing down, as Lucas did, and rebuilding. And I got to tell you, that's real junk. It's embarrassing. It's not true to any architectural model. Then secondarily, you have changed the road structures entirely. You can't get a truck down here anymore. This traffic circle that this brilliant group built is dangerous. Now you've added, get this, 50 units to the acre. The highest density in Sherwood has been put downtown. That's what you've done, is 50 units an acre. And you're intending a higher density on that piece you bought. So what do you have? You have a gobbledygook of architecture. You have a road net that can't be used to deliver things. You've introduced a demographic mix that none of us know what it is with a parking problem, and now you brought in Walmart. Now, the interesting thing about Walmart is that of all the mass merchandisers, they are the lowest income and middle-aged group. So now you've changed the demographic mix coming through town. Anyone that would call that a vision is either smoking marijuana or should be, because that's a nightmare. You're going to have 37,000 cars moving through that and Tualatin and Sherwood Road on a holiday at Walmart. Of course, it wasn't Walmart, it was a shopping center. We all remember that. You don't have a town center anymore. What you've got is a Los Angeles spread that if you don't make moves to stop, you are going to tear this downtown and stop the gentrification if you haven't already, and you're going to create a completely demographic mix. Now, you're all going to say things like Mr. Grant did to me once, that tomorrow morning retailing's not going to be a zero-sum game. He's the expert. I've never met anyplace else in the United States who said that nonsense. You have a zero-sum game in retailing. You meet it, and you're going to put somebody out of business. Walmart's going to put some people out of business, and a lot of them. And that's just predatory retailing. No problem with that, I guess. But what I'd do if I were you people, and I'd be really careful in about a year and a half if I ate any place in this town without watching some of the Southern movies and see what people think of what they did to the slaveries.
Thank you, Jim. Nancy Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm entitling mine Traffic and the Plan, the Environment, the Citizen, and the Wildlife. You're right, Julie, the announcement was made. Everyone came. We've been talking. So because of what I do for a living, I started digging deeper because I wanted to see both sides and try to weigh and balance them. But as I dug deeper, I remembered why I moved here. You have a floodplain around here that pretty well protects the citizens at this point. I don't think it's going to be there much longer. I think we're going to see what happened to Tualatin during the last big flood, at least when I was here. And that is, all the downtown gets flooded. And why is that? You change the geographic pattern of the town. You change the geological pressures. You change. But, of course, that's up to you. You can adopt a plan. You can bring in higher density growth, lower density growth. You can call it whatever you want to. But when you change a traffic plan the way that you're doing, and you say in this traffic plan, this is sustainable in Sherwood, I don't think so. That 37,000 that was just mentioned probably is much closer to being true than the, 1.7 cars per day I was given when I first came down here and I asked about the traffic plan. The impact versus the cost that you're going to gain from it, I'm not sure. I keep debating that one over and over and over again. What would be the impact? Well, I think to the environment, the impact is going to be horrible. I think that the wildlife refuge is already basically sitting on extremely fragile land. I always found it rather humorous that we invite the wildlife in and then we have duck blinds so close to them to kill them. That is really very odd, and I don't think I'm alone in that thought. galvanization. What did you think? Did you think people wouldn't come down here and get a little angry about the biggest predatory retailer coming into town? I noticed that there is not a lot going out down at the site these days, and I hope it remains that way personally. Then the last thing I'd like to cover is the citizen comments. We've come down and we've made comments, and they've normally been stopped pretty much because I don't think anybody sitting up here, other than maybe the mayor, has really cared much about the comments made by citizens. And I say that because every time I've come down, I've addressed at least one of you personally. So with that said, I'd just like to remind you of one thing, and that is the citizen's voice is important in this town. We are taxpayers. We are homeowners, and we do matter, whether you think so or not. We will matter every day. As we're going out of town, it's becoming increasingly harder, and as we're coming home from our work, it's becoming increasingly harder. There is a perception in this town, and that perception is only echoed in the newspapers, that there's a lot of preferential treatment. I believe it's very true. I believe that on this very board there sits people who get preferential treatment in this town. I believe they are also getting preferential treatment on the county level and even on the state level. With that said, good luck with this plan, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Naomi? And we don't require you to give your addresses anymore, just if you're a resident or non-resident.
Hi, my name is Naomi Belov, and I live in Sherwood. I have a question about the new plan that you're still considering. Have you included Phase 7 of the Langer PUD?
The Langer PUD Phase 7 is not included in the boundary.
Okay, so one of the slides that you showed had the Langer PUD now included. What was that?
We have 1 minute to respond, it said.
Okay. Basically, that was the study area. This is the boundary,
I know.
the dark line area. The Langer PUD was in the original study area, which included more than the area that's in the plan.
Okay, so just to clarify, that Phase 7 is not considered part of the Town Center Plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I noticed here in the book that you gave us to look at, you have a number of road projects, reasonably likely transportation projects in the study area. A lot of these seem to feed directly into that new proposed development in Phase 7 of the Langer PUD, the proposed Walmart site. That is Adams Avenue, now called Langer Parkway. Are these all studies that you've completed or you're planning to spend more of our tax dollars on in order to benefit this development, or is that things that are coming up in the future, such as Oregon Street, the Murdoch Road to rail crossing, Adams Avenue to Gerda Lane? You're planning to construct a road to collector standards, Century Road, Langer Farm Parkway to Tualatin Sherwood Road. I mean, all these roads directly benefit that one retailer. I don't see why our tax dollars should be going to pay for any of this. Thank you.
Phil Gorillo?
Mayor Middleton, council members, I'm Phil Grillo. I'm a land use attorney with Davis Wright Tremaine in Portland, and I'm here on behalf of Tactful Properties LLC. One of the principals with Tactful is here with me this evening, Beth Faraday. They own the Sherwood Cinema Center in town here. What I wanted to do is just briefly address the issue that Julia mentioned earlier, which is the adjacent to language that we proposed initially in front of the Planning Commission and then worked with both staff and the Planning Commission to, in essence, refine that language. So what you have now in front of you is the, if you will, adjacent to language that the Planning Commission has recommended to you. And just to kind of get you oriented there, and Julia will, I'm sure, correct me if I leave something out, but I believe that language is in Policy 7, Strategy 7.6, Policy 8, Strategy 8.3 and 8.4, and there is some related language in Policy 5, which includes both property owners and governmental agencies to actually target investment and things with regard to Policy 5. So what I want to do is just kind of briefly respond to the comment really that ODOT made. We've previously addressed the comments that Washington County made, but ODOT, I think, is expressed a concern about somehow muddying the boundary of the town center by including this language. And I just want to make it clear that I don't believe was the intent of the Planning Commission, and it wasn't our intent when this language was proposed. Originally, we asked the Planning Commission to consider actually amending the boundary. The Planning Commission decided didn't want to go in that direction. Staff didn't want to go in that direction. So instead, we worked in a more collaborative way to try and, if you will, articulate that there is, in essence, an area of influence around the town center boundary. This is not an urban growth boundary. It's not that kind of a boundary. This is a planning area boundary, and obviously things that happen inside the town center will affect uses that are and activities that are adjacent to the town center, and that is certainly the case with regard to us, located immediately north of the road of Tualatin Sherwood Road. So for us, the concern has always been that things that are going to happen as Washington County continues to design that roadway need to be taken into consideration as part of the town center plan, because we have a connection to the town center. We have a connection to the properties to the south of there, and we obviously influence the town center. One of the uses, for example, that's very important in a town center, both from the city's perspective and from Metro's perspective, is having a cinema in a town center. That's the kind of use you want to have. You don't have a cinema in the town center per se, but you do have a cinema immediately adjacent to the town center. So it's important from a planning perspective to consider these areas of influence, and that's all we were really trying to influence in terms of adding that language. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I wanted to try and clarify what I believe the intent was, certainly what our intent was, and I believe that's really reflected in the intent of what the Planning Commission did. So with that, I'll stop and answer any questions if you have any.
We're not really taking questions now. We're just taking pretty much input unless it's something that she can answer on a technical basis.
Very
So,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Gene Stewart.
Eugene Stewart, non-resident but a property owner in the city, so my taxes, I do pay taxes down here. One of the things each night as I drive home from work and sit in this lovely traffic around Six Corners, I can't help but think this plan does not help traffic any. So I'm a little befuddled as how you can try to plan something when you're not even looking at the traffic situation you have out there. A bare minimum, we should at least be looking at a bypass around Sherwood, because probably 90% of that traffic out there doesn't want to stop in Sherwood. But yet we're stopping at every stoplight. And what you have is you don't realize the traffic that comes from McMinnville, Dundee, Newburgh, comes up through Sherwood, headed into downtown Portland or over to Beaverton. 90% of the traffic that comes through downtown, they're not stopping. They're using it as a thoroughfare to get through Sherwood. How do we stop that? How do we correct that? Planners have not come up with a good plan yet. I don't think this plan has been thought out well enough and long enough. It needs to be tabled. You need to go back to the drawing board and do something that is more reasonable and will correct some of the traffic problems you have out there. This is just going to compound your traffic problems. It's not going to cure them. I was at one of those citizens' participation meetings, and let me tell you, you could have had a half a dozen more of those and still not got everything inputted that the citizens would probably like to input. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Susan Claus?
Susan Claus, resident. Jim, could you come up here? I am really sick right now, but I have some comments, and I asked Jim, can I sit here and can he do it for me?
Go ahead.
I mean, I've never done this before, but I'm just.
Jim?
Jim, could you come up? Can you stop the?
If I understand the essence of Susan's complaint, it is that what you've done is changed the transportation system so it is no longer a central business district. Both the way in which the streets are built, the angles and the curvatures have taken away any ability for it to be a central business district. Now, with that in mind, you need to be very careful and realize what you've done. Any transportation manual will tell you that you have made this area non-functional except for certain kinds of automobile traffic. That's first definition of central business. The second thing that is miraculously short-sighted is when we had a trip to England, Sir Harold Pierce took us around a series of buildings in London. Allegedly, some of them were 300 and 500 years old, yet they were built after the bombing, but they were built exactly back to standard, as they do in San Francisco. What Susie has done as an appraiser is look at what you've done downtown, and you have barred restoration. You can't do it. It's impossible. It's what you call a structural decision. You have built it into your fees. And I think the point she asked me to make the strongest is that the staff alleges and uses this word stakeholder. I was suing the APA for the union, and we won rather handedly when they invented that word. And I was in a meeting when, God bless the Chinese, they said there ain't such a word. Once you define stakeholders, you bring in everyone. Anybody that can make money off the project. And I dearly love Americans because particularly the political class try to get their snout into everybody's money and then claim they're doing the public good. What you've got is a class in this town run by Mr. Gall that have a direct financial interest on the way they structure it, and you cannot restore this area. You have to redevelop it. And you can't redevelop it because you put a net in that will prevent you from doing the density that you would need to redevelop it. And what she is suggesting in that line is as soon as your units, you realize these 100 apartments you signed 2.5 years before the public had any idea you were selling it to Capstone, are Keys, who has 3 times the parking, has 40% of the density you have, and he has a major traffic problem. What Susie is suggesting as an urban land economist is you better come back to reality now, and you better look at what you've done down here, and you better look at rezoning it and forget what you're doing, because you've changed the demographic profile, and this is not your town center anymore. It's going to be demographically a much worse situation. Now, I think that's what she's trying to say, and I'm probably saying it with about 4 times the vehemence I would. I think in the districts I've worked, it's hopeless what you've done.
Thank you, Jim.
Get it back.
Merida Meyer. Said it right?
Good evening, Mayor, Middleton, Council. First, I was ill-prepared to actually speak about the town center this evening, but first I'd like to start by saying that in listening to Julia's review this evening, I am very pleased with a lot of the changes and modifications that have been made. I feel like citizen participation and involvement was was well received by Planning Commission and staff, and for that I'm thankful, and I feel like a lot of progress has been made. I would, however, like to echo some of the concerns that have been made this evening, particularly related to traffic impacts and adjacent uses. In an effort to be very succinct, I would share a lot of the concerns that were expressed by, I believe, the attorney a couple of people ago. And I would also like to echo concerns about overall traffic impacts within the city of Sherwood, primarily surrounding this boundary. In advance of choosing whether or not to move forward with the town center plan this evening, I would hope that you would invoke commentary from our city manager and get some thoughts from the city manager on monetary implications on the implementation of the plan, so that we can better understand how this will play out, so that we can better understand how, if implemented, the policies will be presented to the community, how community comment will be received, and how those items will be further considered. I think that Julia mentioned that this plan as it sits is a vision of what we would like to see, or what staff has reviewed with the public and others in terms of what this town center could potentially look like. And looking holistically at this town center area, I feel like development is going to happen, and I think that is a positive thing for our city. I think that very deliberate development needs to be made, and I feel like all of these implications of zoning and land use and traffic certainly need to be reviewed before any final decisions are made. Thank you.
That was the last comment that I had on the town center, so I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up to council. Nobody from council?
Well, I'm
Go ahead.
sure Councilor Henderson or Council President Henderson.
She
has
likes
a lot.
to go last.
I know. So, I just was first going to ask Julia if she would be willing to offer some of your thoughts on the public testimony that was given, because generally I just ask you the questions, but I saw you writing all the notes.
Thank you. Yeah, I did want to respond a little bit to the traffic questions, and then actually Ms. Belov's comments about the transportation improvements. I think what she's referring to are the improvements on that are listed on page 62 of your packet, I believe, but I'm not 100% positive. Most of what we have identified are things that are already in existing plans and, transportation system plan, pedestrian, or the parks master plan. There are only a few items on page 62, the bold and italicized, that were specifically called out for in addition to those plans and those improvements. And then on page 67 of your packet, which is page 19 of the Town Center Plan, there was some analysis that identified, again, this plan doesn't go quite as far as it originally had envisioned to go. So there are no zone changes. There's nothing that in and of itself is going to do anything that triggers transportation planning rule compliance and the need to identify additional transportation improvements. On page 67 of your packet, page 19 of the Town Center Plan itself, it identifies that if you were to do changes to your code and comp plan in such a way that you increased density kind of as it might be envisioned, there were a few projects that were identified that would be necessary. Anything that we do moving forward in implementing this plan, because we didn't do anything through this plan that triggers the transportation planning rule. If we did zone changes, if we did things that are going to increase density in any way, we'll need to make transportation planning rule compliance findings and identify traffic solutions that are necessary there. And then also I'll add that we are just starting to update our transportation system plan. The Planning Commission just had a kickoff meeting at their last meeting, and I'll put a plug out, we're advertising for Citizen Advisory Committee members to sit on that committee. Through that process, again, there are some strategies in here that will be folded into the transportation system planning update process, where we'll get a little bit more in-depth at solving some transportation problems throughout the city, but also in this area. So I don't know if that answers questions or raises more questions for you.
Well, I just go back to page 62.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand what you were trying
Sorry.
to say there when you said that does call out.
Yeah, if that list of projects, there's 25 projects.
Mm-hmm.
The only things that are not already in identified plans are the bold and italicized projects.
Okay.
Most of the list are things that are already in existing plans.
Okay.
So we're not doing
Anything new except for that.
except for those bold and italicized projects.
So can I do a little reflective listening to see if I got it?
Yes, please.
What you are stating essentially is because the plan didn't go so far to change the zoning, it did not trigger certain requirements of a transportation system plan to define how those roads would be paid for and built
Right.
before.
Right.
And so this is now a comment that I gleaned from the conversation, is that this is a really bare bone structure that will live and grow as needed as we see the growth and the development that desires to come. But right now, we want to have a vision and a plan for the future, so to make sure if we don't plan and they come, it can be a nightmare, right? And someone else can step in and we don't have any say.
Right, and it gives us Mirta's comment about, what's the monetary implications and what's the plan. I honestly don't know, because we haven't, it's really up to the council in terms of policies and priorities. We've got a lot of things at the community level on our plate. We are doing our transportation system plan updates, so we know we're going to be able to fold some things into there. We've still got some code cleanup action items that we need to work on, and we're going to be able to fold some things into some of these elements into that. Having this plan allows us to keep this foundation in mind as we move forward. If you want to make this the highest priority, then we will figure out a way to make this the highest priority. If it's certain elements of it raised to a higher level, for example, the branding and signage, that may be something that you push to the side, or it may be something that you say we really want to work with the chamber, or we may want to try to work, make that a higher priority. So it's really it's a starting point for us to then develop prioritization from, but I don't have a recommendation for you at this time.
Okay. It really is just a general structure that we're starting with, knowing that it will change as needs, and it's a concept plan.
Right.
Yeah, what I heard from the citizens was the concern that everyone has, traffic. And we do know that the improvements that are happening will hopefully help a lot with that. Have we had any more word on the 12th and Sherwood?
Yes, and my understanding is that the county has made the determination that the signal will come out. But that we actually did early on a sensitivity analysis from the traffic standpoint for this plan. Okay, what happens if it comes out? What happens if it stays in? From a traffic standpoint, it really doesn't impact the town center that much. But all of these improvements, both currently in design and construction, but also planned, will certainly help. But I also want to stress that the purpose of the idea of a town center is that you have a walkable, pedestrian-friendly, multimodal area where people can get to either by bike or walking, or get in their car, drive to there in their car and then walk around. And so the idea of a well-planned and well-developed town center plan in and of itself helps reduce traffic because you have something that's a little bit more appealing to get around other than just in an automobile.
Great. That's all I had. Thank you, Julia.
Thanks.
Council President?
Could you possibly address some of the citizens' concerns about adjacent properties or adjacent uses and why that might be a perceived concern or a concern in the future?
They recognize that in the main issue that I'm thinking of that was really discussed a lot at the Planning Commission level was they were concerned about having, if we had different standards, specifically, like if we said no drive-throughs in the town center standards, that it could both look odd but also unintentionally detract from the town center viability. And so what they wanted to do was really acknowledge that this is a town center, we want to plan for the town center, but we also want to kind of consider how it affects those adjacent uses, and that's what their recommendation does. ODOT and the county's concerns are just not, I'm speaking for them, but I think that it's really not understanding what we mean when we talk about adjacency and concerned about the unintended consequences from a traffic modeling standpoint and from a planning in the future standpoint.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Butterfield.
Well, I personally think that we have a traffic problem, and I think that we ought to put the plan center on hold until we fix that traffic problem. I think we could spend our money more wisely in taking care of that issue before we move on. That's my opinion.
Well, one thing on this is it is just a plan, and it can be modified later and changed with public input and all that. The one thing we are facing on this is kind of a timeline. This plan is part of the overall plans that we have to get in order for us, isn't it right, to get funding through other projects? We have to have the plan.
Well, certainly Metro created more of a carrot that previously when they required, when they designated town center areas, there was no consequence, I guess. Right now, they've modified it and been more clear with what it means to have a town center plan and to adopt a town center plan, and they've tied regional investments to cities that, basically that, you can't get a regional investment if you don't have a town center plan. I'll also add, and it's certainly does not mean you have to adopt anything or adopt what you want, but we do have a grant. We need to show some conclusion to this. I guess I'll just leave that there. And then it's also tied to the Southwest Corridor planning
Correct.
efforts as well.
And we do have the TSP coming up, which is a traffic. That's where we'll really get into the traffic issues too.
Right.
So I just want to make sure, once again, that I understand. What you're saying is there is possibly a benefit financially to adopting a plan to help with the traffic. Potentially.
Possibly. Right now, it's fairly limited with what they define as regional investment.
So the carrot's a mini carrot.
Right. So, but there's certainly the possibility that they could change that over time. And certainly when we apply for regional funding through the MTIP process, there are priorities given if you're in a town center or a regional center, and if we don't have an adopted town center, that could negatively affect us as well.
So just because we've been through a lot of this recently where we understood where the master plan that was created, I can't recall.
Southeast Sherwood Master Plan.
Thank you. When it wasn't adopted, it kind of left us in a bind now.
Yeah.
Is this potentially what could happen in the future?
Yeah, anytime you start a process and you have the public sort of aware of things and then you don't do something, there is it muddies the waters, certainly.
Very confusing down the road.
And just, we don't have a vision, you know, and I completely respect what Councilor Butterfield is saying about traffic is, you know, is an impact. This doesn't necessarily affect traffic, but it helps us move forward to solving some problems, and it helps us know what we want to do. And I've had developers in the past come to the city and say, what do you want me to do here? And I can't tell them because we don't have a vision, we don't have a plan. I say, this is what the zoning allows. And if that's what we want as a community, that's great. But having even just a vision helps guide future development and future decisions.
Julie, not to put you on the spot some more, because I also, you know, feel the concerns about the traffic. I think that that's an obvious issue. Does this plan, adopting this plan, bind our feet in any way in adopting that it must be this traffic plan?
No.
Above all
No,
else?
not at all. And that's really where we got to, is anything that really made it sound like we had made a final decision was modified to make it clear that this is a start. This is the start of a long conversation.
Because I attended many of the Planning Commission meetings and the open houses on the Town Center Plan. And the way that, and read the packet, but the way that I see this is as a first step. Mm-hmm. It's our first step forward to creating a vision of what we want Sherwood to be. And I think we're not negating that there are issues that are going to develop and that are here and that are going to continue to develop along the way. But if you don't step forward, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. I feel like, you know, listening to the public, listening to the Planning Commission, I've heard a lot of work going into this, a lot of vetting. And I feel like we need to move forward as a council and as a city with a plan mm-hmm. that can be modified.
That's my feeling on it too, is that it is only a plan and it can be modified, and we're not going to be stuck with anything we don't as citizens want in this position. And also it does give us a basic starting point, and it does bleed in with the Southwest Corridor Plan, and other plans will all come together. But I want the public to understand that I speak for myself only on the council, none of this would be done without public involvement. We're going to get everybody involved in it. The TSP, if you're interested, like she was saying, is we're looking for citizen volunteers for that, and that will have a lot of impact on the future traffic for this city, and it's critically important if that's what you're really looking to get involved in, the traffic issues. So. Go ahead.
Julie, I just wanted to have a little conversation about traffic and solutions to traffic that have come up in conversations over the last couple of years, and some presented by the county during some of their Tualatin Sherwood 99 intersection meetings. I know when Tualatin Sherwood was built, they built 5 lanes out to Teton, and then they stopped it. And we all know that we need it all the way to 99 and beyond. But what I heard the county discussing was that that is in process. I mean, they're working on making that connection for us. The first project they have to get done is the one they're working on now at 99. And so that addresses some of the Tualatin Sherwood 99 congestion. And then also, as a council, we made a decision a while back and acquired some property up by Elwert and the Elks. And so there's some work going on there to help alleviate that problem with a future roundabout. And I was wondering if you could just maybe speak more to those solutions that are being worked on outside of this particular topic we're working on tonight.
Yeah, and I guess another key project that's a county project is the 124th Avenue extension, which will be a huge relief valve from Tualatin Sherwood Road. And all of those projects, and this is, I think it's hard for people that are sitting in traffic to to accept. All of these projects are funded and are assumed when you're doing your traffic modeling, because you know that they're going to happen, and so those will help improve the transportation system in the future years. And so that's assumed when we're looking at the traffic impacts associated with any development. 124th, Tualatin and Sherwood Road widening, the Kruger-Elwert interchange. Tom, am I missing anything? Those are the big ones. And those are all going to really work together to help solve some of the major transportation problems.
Timeline for those?
I don't know about the Kruger-Elwert. The Tualatin Sherwood Road widening project is, happening now. I think they're looking at constructing next year at this point. And 124th, I just heard yesterday, I think they're looking at 2015 for construction.
And I had heard that Elwert was 2017, isn't it?
I think so. It's in their 6-year funding plan, and we're trying to push them to move it up in the funding plan cycle. But right now, it's towards the end of what they adopted, I think, back in 2012. So their funding goes through 2018 as their cycle for those monies.
Any more discussion?
Well, I'm impressed with what the Planning Commission has put into this. As always, they've done a great job. And so it's been heavily vetted already. Councilor Clark brought up mainly my point. If I could paraphrase the way I was going to say it was, I'm satisfied that this what we're doing here doesn't preclude us from making any kind of decision that we might make or future councils might make with respect to traffic or anything else. It's not made to stop us from making a decision. It's really not what it's for. It's as much as anything a message back to Metro, working with them like all the other town centers around the Portland area. And so I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to call for a motion.
I'll move we read, caption, and adopt ordinance 2013-007, an ordinance approving the Sherwood Town Center Plan and amending the comprehensive plan text to reflect the Town Center Plan and establish a vision, policy, and strategies to guide future implementation. That's a long title.
Second.
That's my motion.
Thank you. Ordinance 2013-007, an ordinance approving the Sherwood Town Center Plan and amending the comprehensive plan text to reflect the Town Center Plan and establishing a vision, policy, and strategies to guide future implementation. Councillor Clark?
Aye.
Councillor Langer?
Aye.
Councillor Butterfield?
Aye.
Councillor Folsom?
Aye.
Councillor Grant?
Aye.
Council President Henderson?
Aye.
Mayor Middleton?
Aye.
Thank you.
I want to point out also that the chair of the Planning Commission's here, and I want to thank and make sure you take back to well, I'll be there anyway, thanking him for all the hard work on this. This was a lot of work. So, next I have citizen comments. Jeanette Hatcher.
I just had surgery, so. Okay, where's my microphone? Okay. Do we need address or just?
No, just.
Okay, Jenna Hatcher, Sherwood. Some of this is kind of old stuff, but about this committee, I didn't realize that they had already had, citizens in town they've already met for this committee. But anyway, I want to thank you for my signs. I'm not sure that they're working. I'm really concerned that right there that they come off 99 and they come at 12th and Gleneagle, and they've got that new road on 12th now, and they just zoom up there. And when they're going to put Walmart up there, there's no lights. There's nothing. Also, I'm trying to get a hold of somebody named Carol who did the Relay for Life. She headed up the Relay for Life, and she was a big help to me when I went there for the day. And I just wanted to thank her. If anybody knows how I can get a hold of Carol. Okay, this is what main thing that I came here for is, I don't know what you call these things. I call them informational signs. It's a great idea. It's those big posts that are in the middle of your sidewalk. I'd like to know what they were smoking the day that they decided to put those in. Take those down. We don't need those. Put them somewhere else. It's a good idea. They're big letters. I can see those. It's nice, but they've got to go. So anyway, so I'm concerned. I'm here every time I can come, except for the last time. You know, I'm really concerned about. I want to be on this committee. You all need me. We've got to figure out something. I know you're concerned about traffic. I'm concerned about pedestrian. You know, and I can't tell you how many times I've nearly gotten killed. It's not if, it's when. And I used to live in Beaverton, which is 4 times bigger than this town, and I felt safer there. I don't feel safe here. I don't feel safe here. I love this town. I don't want to move. I met so many wonderful people here. I mean, it's just amazing how I've been accepted into this town, but something has got to be done. Somebody's got to be listening. And I know Bob Galati's listening. Give that man a raise. He has been fantastic to me. I mean, no, he called me one day and he says, Jan, I want you to know we are listening. We're hearing you, everything. He said, I'll do everything in my power to help you, but I'm here. I want to work with you guys. I want to try to make this town better. There's a lot of people in wheelchairs that I've met, and some of these curb cuts, you'll go to the corner and you'll be out in the middle of the street because you can't get to the next curb cut. They're not even. It's nuts. I want to go over to Albertsons. I can't get over there. There's no sign, and anyway, these are just concern of mine. And I don't know if any of you can help me or direct me of who I can talk to or how we can make this town a little more accessible for those of us with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Gene Stewart. I'm not taking this. This will be the last citizen comment. Oh, yours too, and then 2. That's it. And then we're going to close the citizen comments tonight.
Eugene Stewart, just here again to remind you, let's start doing something about the senior center, figuring out what the city's going to do to operate it. Let's get some visioning and progress so we know before the contractor flows and fishes on the programming side runs out. Let's not leave them in a lurch. Let's know what we're going to do. I'm going to suggest you go up and get some seniors up there, especially the volunteers that are helping running it. I think you'd be amazed at the number of volunteer hours that go in up there. If you got half those hours in the other spots down here in your government, you would have a lot of things you could accomplish. While I'm at it, I see City of Wilsonville put some goats in to eat up their blackberry vines. You got ordinance on evasive weeds control. You're not following it, and probably one of the worst offenders is the city of Sherwood. So what is the policy? How are we going to get those berry vines under control? They are going to become a fire hazard after they sat there 5-6 years. Those vines burn hot, I can tell you. I know, I've seen them burn. So it is a very dangerous situation, and I'm sorry, Bill, but we shouldn't have to get 3 people complaining about it to get something done. It's something that, the staff, they're not dumb. They should know how to figure out how to get it taken care of, or at least prioritize, what it is and why that isn't a high priority. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. And don't forget, Gene, the 30th of September, I believe it is the budget meetings to come further make comments.
Thank you.
Jim?
Robert James Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. First, I want to clear I'm going to take a copy of this tape, and I'm going to take a request of Ms. Murphy's transcription of this, because what I'm going to do is on point on about potential and conflict and actual conflict of interest. And we'll go to proper authorities, both state and federal. I'm assuming Ms. Beery has looked at the IRS probate ruling. We put in ruling here outlining the Langer's interest in real estate and I'm assuming you've taken the time to look at those that we put in from the Secretary of State's office. Since you have vested yourself of continually entering this conflict of interest of apparent or actual, you have now acted as city attorney on this matter, and I'm assuming you've done your due diligence on Mr. Langer's interests. 2, all records of the sign codes we have found, and this is the second point, Ms. Murphy, in your notes, Mr. Langer has voted on every single instance of the sign code. Has never said I have a potential or actual conflict of interest. That takes care of the statute of limitations problem. It's within the 2 years, and we will use that as a reference manual because the League of Cities and Towns, which Barry Elder and Hammond are involved with, make that as a recommendation. Number 2, there is no question of value of signs. Mr. Langer, in the IRS ruling, and he sells signs. He knows they have an economic value. Now you get to an interesting question, that there's a question that you allowed him to vote on Dave Zimmel's Sherwood Plaza, and that family is the lessor of that land. Now that is the only piece of ground, parcel of ground in Sherwood, without frontage on 99W, that voted on that sign code. Secondarily, the sign code is not being and has not been enforced. Now, we will submit documents that show that the non-enforceability of that document is benefiting Mr. Langer. Now, I don't think there's any question at this point there was an actual and there was a potential conflict of interest. I will also, for the purpose of the other agencies, enter a number of court cases where the extreme value getting access to those highways adds to properties is a documented fact. Among those Metro Media, and certainly in this town with billboards selling at the price they're selling, you know you're dealing with something that is worth a third of the value of that frontage. Now, deviating a little bit from the potential and actual conflict of interest, which run anytime you vote on something benefits parcels of land, I would recommend you have a committee, spend a little time with Secretary of State, that IRS ruling, and put them together. You will be quite surprised at the extent of holding of that family. He represents his children, and more than that, he may be the general manager. Now, while this is not the current complaint, which we will fill out now that we're in the statute of limitations and all, think about the budget and ask you something. If in his storage he takes any budget money from somebody you allocate money to and does not bring up a potential conflict of interest, because that will be the next complaint. Thank you.
Thank you. Council announcements.
Just a couple of things. I just wanted to quickly publicly thank Eugene Stewart. He is so diligently in working with us on the senior center, and I wanted him to hear from me from the dais that that's a priority for me as the council liaison to the senior center to work with our city manager and our senior management team on figuring out that plan. Most people don't know, but I actually have a minor in gerontology, have a great passion and love for seniors, and it's the first place I volunteered when I moved to Sherwood 17 years ago, and it still feels like home. I love it there. Secondly, I just wanted to congratulate Marika, I'm slaughtering Miss Conrad's name, from Hopkins Elementary. We all got the press release from the school district today that she was given a national award for being one of 9 outstanding geography teachers in the nation. And that is such a wonderful and well-deserved award. And it also leads me into a quick and giant thank you for the Sherwood School District, specifically the Sherwood Middle School. As some of you may have heard, we had 94 children sign up for our fall junior musical tryouts. And, things change. Not everybody shows up for auditions, so we had 85 show up for auditions. And people who know me well know that I don't believe that you say no to children when they're trying to learn. So through the great support of a 10 directoral team and Mary Ann Funderhyde and Jeanette Godfrey at the middle school, as well as the support of the facilities administration of the Sherwood School District, we have expanded our weekends and we'll be hosting 6 shows, and we've double cast the show. And both casts are incredibly strong, and we're rehearsing already Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but in 1 week the kids have almost learned a third of the show. They are phenomenal. So mark your calendars, October 25th and 26th, and November 1st and 2nd, and I'm just overwhelmed. Cindy, our VPA president, got up in our parents' meeting and said, "This feels like a dream," and I heard somebody said, "or a nightmare," but I have to tell you, it's a dream, and we're very happy. On that note as well, the VPA was just awarded, and I wanted to publicly thank Target, because they were just awarded a grant from Target, which will fund the My Oregon report for 2014 at Archer Glen. We were no longer able to fund that because there was so much need in the schools for our support in the classrooms. We almost hit, I think this may bring us to $100,000 that in 8 years we have donated back to the schools and community and grants and scholarships. But this was one way we could do it, and so we wrote that grant last March, and I just received notice last Friday night that Target had indeed given the VPA for Archer Glen money for that grant. And then I just wanted to mention briefly that I did have the opportunity to meet the new, and Joe, maybe you can help me with his title. The school district consolidated the position of maintenance and transportation directors, and it's, and I'm going to say his name, Rob, but I met Rob Fagliano. And what's his title? I read it and I can't recall. But
I don't know his exact title. It's a combination of a couple positions.
Right.
So the operations and maintenance and also facilities and things like that. So
right. But what I really love is his openness and willingness. His secretary, who's a good friend of mine, just said, "You need to meet Rob." And I was there filling out a sheet, and he came out, and he is so willing and wanting to strengthen partnerships and think outside the box to make things work. And I wanted to commend city staff as well. I got a call, not as a member of city council, but as a facility use user for the Sherwood Middle School gym. I got a call about a month ago from Lance Gilgan, just making sure that the basketball season didn't impinge on our use, and that's never happened before, and he was just so professional and kind. But the partnershiping between the Sherwood schools and the city of Sherwood is going to be invaluable to the taxpayers, and it's really nice to see it happening. And it's the same tax dollar, and those economies of scales are great. So thank you, staff, for doing that. Okay, that's all I had.
So I wanted to make an announcement. The American Cancer Society is having a prevention study, and that is going to be October 8th through the 10th at the YMCA. That's correct. It is a prevention study that anyone between the ages of 30 and 65 years of age can apply for. It's super easy. I've already applied myself to be part of the study. It's just going in and filling out a short form. I think that they take your height, weight, and waist measurement, and then over the course of several years, they follow your habits and tests to try to track different cancer prevention things that you can do to beat cancer. So I highly recommend you to go to the YMCA. You can go now at the front desk. They have application forms. You can sign up online at the American Cancer Society webpage. Selma Broadhurst is looking for volunteers for the days that they are doing the prevention study on the 8th through the 10th. So please contact her or go to the YMCA and say, "I want to volunteer and take height, weight, waist measurements." It's as easy as that. 30 minutes tops is what I've been told. So please go do that in the fight against cancer. Thank you.
I'd just like to congratulate Julie Blooms with her new appointment to Director of Finance. And And it's been a while since we heard an announcement, but I don't remember seeing a plaque show up for that financial award that we got. Has that showed up yet? No. That's coming? Okay.
Ditto on Julie's new placement. I think there couldn't be a better person for the job, and I'm really happy for her also. Speaking of the YMCA, I would encourage anyone to go and have a look. It's looking really, really amazing there. You're stunned when you first walk in, and I know there was a lot done way in the back I haven't even seen. I helped paint over there on a Saturday, and what impressed me most about that was that inspired some of the staff to volunteer their own time in the pool. It was the pool, right, mostly. So that's up, stuff that probably wouldn't have been done, that got done. A lot of volunteer hours went into it, but it doesn't really change the fact that it's just really a great facility and better than ever, I think. It's really neat over there. So looking good. I think we're doing a good thing.
Okay, then we're going on to city manager comments and department reports.
Nothing for tonight, sir.
Then we're going to adjourn into an executive session.